welcome to GYSB Talks. I am your host, Carla Palmer, founder and creator of GYSB. Get Your Sexy Back Health and Fitness Movement. Over 13 years ago, I lost over 50 pounds, and on that journey, I found joy, peace, and more self-love. That's how the GYSB movement got started, because I wanted to share with other people what I had found for myself. And now in my 50s, I'm still on this journey. And now I'm starting to navigate some of the inevitable changes that come with aging. So GYSB Talks will cover topics that will help women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s get to their next level of optimal living. Physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, and in relationships. Guys, I'm so glad you're here. Now, let's get into today's topic, shall we? To another episode of GYSB Talks. I am your host, Carla Palmer, and today we're going to be talking about the college of your dreams. All right, so we've got a really great guest today. Her name is Yolanda Wright. Let me tell you a little bit about Yolanda. Yolanda Wright is the executive director and founder of Focus One College. She received her Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology from the University of California, Berkeley, go Bears, and Master of Arts degree in psychology from the Pepperdine University Graduate School of Education and Psychology. The Focus One College mission is to equip students with the necessary educational and psychological social support to increase competitiveness in the college admission and scholarship application process. Each student's skills, talents, and interests are leveraged to find best match colleges and scholarships. 100% of Focus One College clients receive acceptance into college. That is amazing. Yolanda, I am so happy that you decided that you were going to be on GYSB Talks today.
You're welcome, Carla. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
I'm so glad that you're here with us today. I think this is a really good topic because, the GYSB Talks podcast, we focus on wellness for women over 50. And there are a lot of women in the community who are parents. And then there are some grandparents in here and some aunties who are supporting their siblings with their children. So I think there's some good information that we're going to be able to provide that will help people with their children as they are going to or thinking about going to college. So let's just start with Focus One, right? Focus One, this is your business. You're the executive director. You're the founder. Tell me why you created this business.
So I'll give you a little bit of background.
Okay.
So when I started my career, I graduated from our alma mater, which is Berkeley, in psychology, and received my psychology degree from master's degree from Pepperdine. And I always thought I was going to go into therapy, become a therapist. But I loved advocacy work, and that's how you and I met at Children. And I love the advocacy work and working with underrepresented students and young people. And so I focus mainly on foster youth. And so I had the opportunity to pilot a college access program at UCLA, specifically for foster youth, to help students become competitive in the college application process. So, and gain admission into college. So I learned everything possible about college admissions at UCLA. That's where I received my training. And so I started my own business in 2016. And this is also, I think, a great, example and hopefully a motivation for other women out there who maybe want to consider maybe changing careers or going into a different direction. Because I absolutely love what I do now. I absolutely love it. I love working with students, helping them with their plan. But my psychology degree actually helps me with that. So I believe that what I provide my students is something very different. I take on a very holistic approach. So it's not just about the logistics of the application and filling out applications. What I do with students is really help them on their pathway, whatever they want, whatever's going, their dreams, their motivations. And that's the conversations I have with my students. And so what I do is sometimes I work as early as middle school with students.
Okay.
So if I start that early, we only meet maybe once or twice a year for those first couple of years, but I help them really start to think about what do they love to do? What are they interested in? We start
Mm-hmm.
exploring majors, possible colleges. By the time my students are juniors, we're developing the college list.
Okay.
So like reach colleges, match colleges, and safety colleges.
Can
And
you tell
so,
me the
yeah,
difference between those three? You
okay.
said reach, match, and safety.
So a reach college are those colleges where the student that the college typically accepts into that particular college, the stats are a little bit above that particular student.
Okay.
So by GPA, um, but also admission rates.
Okay.
So you can have a student who's a 4.3 GPA, but they're applying to UCLA, which has an admission rate of 12%. That's a reach because of
Okay.
that combination of data, right? Their GPA, and other pieces of information regarding like their extracurriculars, and other parts of their application. But we have to look at admission rates as well. So
Mm-hmm.
UCLA, for example, will be a reach for any student. It doesn't,
Okay.
right? Because
Yeah.
the admission rates. A match is a combination of your GPA, that you're in line with the type of student that they accept into their program, and
Mm.
their admission rate is a little bit more reasonable.
Okay.
So that might be around 40, 50, 60% admission rates. Okay.
Okay.
Anything around 20% and below is probably going to be a reach for most students.
Okay.
And then a safety college is where your stats are above the average of the typical student they accept into the program, and their admission rates are much higher, maybe around
Okay.
80, 90%. So
Okay.
when I work with a student on developing their college list, we want mostly matches. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is that the better that you match with a college, the better admission rates, but also the better financial aid packets. So
Mm.
that's my experience. Because the more that you match, the more that your stats are in line with students that are accepted into that program or above,
Mm-hmm.
you are in competition for those merit-based scholarships, for those that additional aid that the college wants to offer.
Okay.
If you get accepted into, let's say, your dream college, but you're in kind of the your stats are not as competitive, but you happen to get into the program, you're just not going to be as competitive for those merit-based scholarships.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That makes
So
sense.
yeah, so I've had students who've gotten into their top 3 colleges and they've selected their second or
Hmm.
third choice because the
Financial.
program offered them so much more because they really wanted them.
Mm-hmm.
So so I've had that happen. And so I feel that's a very smart approach that students will take. And I encourage students to wait. So they have their dream colleges, they have their matches, they have their safeties. Oh, and keep in mind, I make sure that when I work with students, that they would be happy at any of those colleges. So we
Okay.
do the research. So even if they decide on their safety, it's going to be a college that they're going to be very happy to attend. So
Mm-hmm.
we work hard on selecting those colleges.
So I
Uh,
have a question.
yeah.
There are a lot of parents. Let's just keep it real. There are a lot of
Hmm.
parents who want their kids to go to certain schools because that's what they want.
Hmm.
Not because that's what the kid wants or the young person, but they want them to follow in their footsteps or go to a school that maybe they weren't able to go to. So they're
Hmm.
kind of like living through their children. And a lot of people, a lot of parents like to brag. Oh, my
Hmm.
son is at Howard or my son is at Harvard. That's not even what the kids want. So what do you do when there's this parent that's kind of overbearing and they want this specific thing for
Hmm.
their child and their child doesn't necessarily want that route?
Right. So I feel one of the most important factors in student success is their own buy-in.
Hmm.
So, and I think that's why families are happy when they hire me to work with their students, because I'm kind of more of an objective person that the student can speak to, because the families are always welcome to join the meetings, maybe in the beginning of the meeting for a few minutes. But really, all my sessions are one-on-one with a student.
Mm.
Really find out what do they want in the process, because again, the more they have buy-in, the better that they're going to do in the process, the more successful that they're going to be, not only in the college admissions process, but at the college that they're going to end up.
Hmm.
So what you've posed, I've had that happen quite quite often, where there's a disparity. The parent
Yeah.
wants something different than what the child wants. And I've had students where they've even talked about backing out. They don't want it.
Mhm.
They don't want
Mhm.
that experience. And they talk to me about possibly not even going to college because
Mhm.
it's a frustrating process for them. So I have for example, I had a dad who went to an HBCU. He pledged a fraternity and had the best experience, the best HBCU experience, and he really wanted that for his son. His son did not want that. He didn't want
Mhm.
that. He
Mm.
really actually wanted to leave high school and start working. He didn't
Okay.
want to do the school spirit, the joining a frat. And so with me, he was talking about, I don't think I want college anymore. And so we talked to the parents, and they were upset, but I don't have strong reactions like the parents will have. I start to ask questions. Well, what are you
Mhm.
looking for? Once he started telling me what kind of experience he wanted out of high school, I told him, I said, there's colleges that can meet that.
Hmm.
That can meet that. There's some colleges, it's not all about it's kind of quiet environments. They don't have a football team. They
Mhm.
don't have. They're not really big on frats and sororities. And we started looking at colleges, and guess what? He found a college. It was a Cal State,
Mhm.
quiet, where he didn't need that. He didn't need that kind of social experience that his dad had. And guess what? He's at that college now. He's successful
Oh.
and he's working and going to school. That's the experience that he wanted. He didn't want
Mhm.
the experience that his dad had. But the parents ended up being very happy because he ended up at college. But
Mhm.
he created a different experience for himself, really getting that out of them, of the type of experience that they want rather than
Mhm.
their parents.
And the parents, so when you had this one-on-one with the student without the parents being present
Mhm.
and you had to take that information back to the parents, did he do that or did you do that?
Oh, I make sure my students do that. I'm a
Okay,
firm
good.
believer from my experience, my whole experience of the last 20 years, working with foster youth, working with underrepresented students, really helping them to be advocates for themselves.
I love it.
Really, really important to me. So when I work with students, I want them to be successful on their own. I want them to start practicing advocacy, advocating for themselves, not only with the colleges, but with their parents as well, having those really difficult conversations. So I had him speak to his parents.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then and I had conversations with the parents. Um, and yeah, so I'm a firm believer in helping them to be advocates, to really express their needs, what their goals are, what their
I
needs.
love that. That's a life skill, So
Yes,
you're in there and you're building these relationships and you're actually teaching life skills, which is what we used to do at United Friends.
that's where I learned all that from. All my experience at United Friends of the Children. And yeah, just incorporating my own education, my own work experience, and incorporating that into the work that I do with students now in regards to
Mhm.
college admissions, really helping them becoming advocates for themselves.
Mhm.
Mhm.
What about parents who have these dreams where, they're excited about their kids going to college and the kids don't want to go at all and are not going to go?
So now, just from my experience, this is just from my experience working with families. I've had several students who've said that they didn't want to go to college. Ultimately, they all ended up in college. And the
Hmm.
reason, and I think what happens is that I don't think students and families realize that you can use our higher education in any way you want.
Hmm.
So, not everyone needs to go to a 4-year college, but I'm a firm believer in using our California higher education system, like the community colleges. You can
Okay.
go to community college and get a certificate. You can
Mhm.
do an apprenticeship. There's so many opportunities. So, I'm a firm believer that higher education is for everyone.
Mhm.
So, like I said, even the students who said that I don't think I want college, they ended up in college. They ended up utilizing the system to their benefit, to, how it's going to help them get to their goals.
Mhm.
Now, I'm just letting you know my experience. So I haven't had a student yet who didn't attend college. So I've worked with community college students, and help them on that pathway as well. So
Mhm.
there's so many opportunities. So yeah, 4-year degree is not necessarily um, for everyone, but I believe the higher education system is for everyone. That's my
Yeah.
to leverage it. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's this message that's kind of being put out there by a lot of people that's like, oh, college isn't for everybody, but that's not the whole message. I like the way that you're saying, like, there
Hmm.
are other avenues that you can take, certificate programs that take a year,
Right.
certificate programs that might take 6 months, that'll help you get your foot
Absolutely.
in the door and something that you're really passionate about. And then you work from there to possibly get additional certificates in the future. But there is a way that, like you're saying, you can actually leverage the system
Like, for
to work
example,
for you.
I have students, so I have a lot of students who are interested in music. So I've
Mhm.
had lots of experience who want to be like, where the parent will tell me, oh my God, my son wants to be a rapper. And
Mhm.
I don't scoff at that. Like, the
Mhm.
parents sometimes are like almost kind of like, oh my God, I don't know what to do with him. It's like, that's not a problem for me.
Hmm.
I'm totally fascinated and interested to talk to the student and find out, okay, what interests you about going into this type of career, doing music. And guess what? It always comes back to skill building as well. And this is what I really ingrain in my students, is that you can follow any passion or dream, but you have to build skills.
Yes.
So let's find out. Okay, you like the editing, you like editing music, and or whatever it is, writing the music, writing lyrics. Okay,
Yeah.
you need to master English. You need to master some type of technology.
Mhm.
So let's look at colleges that will help you do that. Okay,
Mhm.
there's possibly a music production program at a college, which they're more rare at the 4-year colleges, but there are some. If they want to pursue their BA, that might be a route. Okay, BA is not their route. Well, let's look at classes at community college where you can go for 6 months or a year and develop your skills. So I'm a firm believer in really holding my students accountable to their dreams. So, whatever your dream, you need to master it. You
Mhm.
need to develop some type of mastery. So let's utilize our higher education system to help you do that. And with community college, it's very affordable.
Yeah.
But I push my students to think about that. To think,
Yeah.
how are you going to master this dream of yours? And you
Yeah.
be out there floating around and not mastering it. So what?
Yeah, the business side of it as well.
Yes,
I
that's
know one thing because
true.
my son, as you know, my son is a rap artist
Hmm.
and he's also really good at writing and everything. But I think he's looked at different programs and maybe he needs to connect with you, but he's looked at different programs, but
Hmm.
they're like more for profit. So it's thousands and thousands of dollars
Yes.
for these programs and he's kind of backed away from it because he would be in a lot of debt.
Hmm.
So I think that, maybe some more research could be done on different things that he could take at the community college level where it's more affordable, where, his dad and I could help him with some of that. But I think that that's great advice. Even like I said, the business side of it, like when you are a successful artist, how are you going to manage your finances?
Absolutely, absolutely. And some community colleges offer more in a particular area or field. So like, for example, Santa Monica College, they have lots of certificate programs and opportunities in kind of the digital arts. And
Hmm.
I really also encourage my students to look into mastering technology, because
Hmm.
it doesn't matter if you want to go into music or writing or medical field or the education. You really have to develop your uh, skills in technology. So much is going in that direction. So even if you're looking at music, so much is done kind of through the internet, through
Yeah.
technology. So there's programs out there, and for the community colleges, it's relatively low cost. And I really encourage um, students and families to look into that, and that's the work I do with families. So we look for them, we look for those programs, because you're absolutely right. Those for-profit programs are incredibly expensive.
Ooh, a lot of money.
So we want to utilize the public school system, the community colleges, to find those particular programs that will help your child kind of develop certain skills and be more marketable,
Hmm.
their industry. But yeah, those for profits, I probably would. I don't really recommend those, because I think
Yeah.
so many other options. We just have to
Hmm.
find them.
Hmm.
So we just have to find those programs.
So when it comes to, we're talking a lot about like California community colleges and colleges here. When
Mhm.
it comes to parents thinking about and young people, because you're working more with the student, about what college is best for them, in state or out of state? Do you really consider like the maturity level of the student when you're having these conversations? Like, how does that work?
So, so I assist students with looking at both in-state and out-of-state. I think it just depends on the type of experience that the student wants. And
Mm-hmm.
then, of course, in collaboration with the parents, regardless if it's in-state or out of state, that first year, that student is going to be on their own.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more of maybe the culture and the environment, because I
Mm-hmm.
think that if a student wants to go to college, I mean, they should be able to spread their wings, right? So either in state or out of state, it's more of the culture of the school. And sometimes students may have difficulty, let's say, going to the East Coast.
Yeah.
It could even just be the cold. They didn't
Yeah.
realize how cold it was going to be, or the culture, or what have you. So it's really important. I think it's more of the student support services that are at the colleges for your
Mm-hmm.
child,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that they access them. I think that's
Mm.
more important. Are they going to have maybe some challenges transitioning? That would be normal. So it's more of what's the game plan.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I work with families as well, is the cultural, social, psychological piece of it as well.
Mm.
So I have, especially out of COVID, I would say the majority of my clients experience some type of anxiety or
Mm-hmm.
depression coming out of COVID. Completely
Mm.
normal. So, and because of my background, I feel equipped to kind of address those with the families and the students. And those are issues that I talk about even, outside of COVID with families. What's the support system you have in place? And most families don't even ever think about that or discuss that with their kids. It's not something, it's really in the forefront of your mind. You're just excited about college, right?
Yeah.
They're just excited about applying to college. That's where the focus is where they're going to get in, which of course that's normal and natural, but no, hardly anyone really talks about the psychological piece, the
Mm.
social adjustments. And I find that in my experience at UCLA, many of the students, or well, the students who weren't as successful, for the majority of them, it wasn't necessarily the academic work, it was the adjustment to a completely different environment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, it was difficult for them. So that's what I look at and talk about with my families when they're moving transition to college. And it really doesn't matter if it's in state or out of state. Now, out of state, it does come with additional concerns, right?
Yeah.
Getting to your child, them coming home, again, the cold, the weather, if it's in a rural area, those type of issues that we discuss with families, and of course the support system. So I some of my students have IEPs, uh,
Yeah.
seeking disability services. So I will talk to my families about that, of what the support services for disabled students are on the campus, and making sure that the student knows how to access that, how to apply, how to register, and how to access services when they're there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm a firm believer not just getting my students into college, but making sure that they're prepared, and
Mm-hmm.
that when they leave, that they are prepared and thinking about all those type of things of where do you go when you're struggling in a class? Where
Mm-hmm.
do you go when you're having trouble with your roommate? So
Mm-hmm.
we talk about those things. So I make sure my students are prepared for that. Also, what I assist students with and their families is talking about the financial piece. I find most families and their kids don't talk about that until it's almost too late, until they have their college offers, and then they have to turn down certain colleges because they just can't afford it, or they're in college and they can't finish because they can't.
Mm.
So it's very important to me that my students, my families, do not go into huge debt. I'm a
Yeah.
firm believer against that. So I really work with my families to think about those things before they apply, during the time that they're applying to everything that's available, so that they're submitting their FAFSA, they're applying to merit-based scholarships, departmental scholarships. So they're applying to everything. So they make sure that they have a large portion of their education covered.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about the Ivy League schools and what they offer that people
Mhm.
may not be aware of?
Yes. So um, I really encourage my students who are especially like high performing students, and if they happen to be a student of color, if they happen to be, underrepresented students, or even students with learning differences, these Ivy Leagues and these private colleges really want our students.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of families don't know about like the fly-in programs. So they're called diversity fly-in programs. And some of these Ivy League colleges, some of these very small liberal arts colleges that have huge endowments, they have tons of money, they will fly your student in for like a weekend with other students and talk to them about college admissions, transitioning to college. And it's not an automatic acceptance into the college. The student still has to apply, but I find that students are very successful in that process if they participate in these diversity fly-in programs.
Mm-hmm.
So I work with families so that they're aware of these programs, that they apply. Hopefully some of the students will be accepted and get flown into these colleges and be offered,
Yeah.
some of these colleges as well, they're considered no loan colleges.
Mm.
So what that means is that they expect most families to contribute some portion of the education, but whatever they feel that the family cannot afford, they do not um encour- they provide enough grants where the families do not have to take loans.
Wow.
Yes.
That is
So
wonderful.
yeah, so I help these families figure out which colleges are these no loan colleges. um so for example, when my daughter applied to college in 2018, she applied to the diversity flying program at Wellesley, which is
Mm.
a small liberal arts college. um, and they flew her out twice. So
Wow.
it was almost like they were recruiting her because she was a girl of color in going into game design,
Yeah.
and they offered her a full ride. Now, mind you, she turned it down because her number one choice is USC, and she got into USC in the game design program. So now she's graduated and is a game designer. So,
Awesome.
but that's what I do with families and students. I help them find these programs that are looking for our kids, and be exposed. Be
Mm-hmm.
exposed to those environments, for the colleges to be aware of our students. And they offer these huge packages, and like in my daughter's case, a full ride. At USC, she was on a full ride. Everything was covered. Sometimes we miss out on these small liberal arts colleges with these huge endowments on the East Coast, that we should be looking at. And so
Mm-hmm.
I help students find those. And also for these private colleges and these Ivy Leagues, not all of them, but some of them, demonstrated interest is very important. And so
Mm.
demonstrated interest is your students' interest in that college. And some of these colleges will track our students. And when I say,
How do you show a demonstrated interest?
I can let you know. So one way is that I tell my students, so I'll give you some little tricks here. Uh, so one way is to make sure that your student is using the same email for all their college admission stuff.
Okay.
So, and some families will even create, or student will even create a separate email just for their college admissions, process. Um, and so when these colleges, you want to get on their lists. Okay. uh
Mm-hmm.
so they're kind of mailing lists, but that's digital mailing lists. Whenever you reach out to the college, you want to use that same email. You want to reach out to the admissions counselor who's assigned to your high school.
Mm.
So every college has an admissions officer who's either assigned to your high school or your geographic area.
Okay.
So you want to find out who that is. And then when they send you emails like inviting you to tours, digital tours, open those emails, because they have a system where they can track if you open their emails or not. Other thing is, make sure you do the tours. And it's nice if you can visit the campus, but it's okay if you can't do
Okay.
the tours. And whenever it asks for an email, please use that same email, because they will track it. Now,
Okay.
how important is that? It's not the number one factor. The number one factor in college admissions is, the first thing are your grades, right? your grades, your test scores, if applicable. Some colleges are test optional. Some colleges are test blind, like the UCs and the CSUs are test blind. They no longer use the standardized tests for college admissions. So going back to the demonstrated interest, yes, just making sure that you're on their radar for these private colleges.
Okay. Okay. One thing that I wanted to ask you, and I don't know if you have the answer for this, but we live in a social media age where these young kids put any and everything on social media. So my question is, are the colleges looking at social media accounts?
Great question. Some are.
Okay.
So there are other colleges, they're so large, they don't have the capacity to look at those social media. So typically like the public colleges are not going to. They just don't have the capacity. They're too large. But some of these private smaller colleges, they do have the capacity,
especially if they really want you.
Absolutely. And where it matters is later on down in the college admissions process, where maybe they're debating. So remember how I was saying they first look at your stats, your grades, maybe your test scores. Then what's next? What's important next? The next thing that's important are your extracurriculars, your activities outside of school, your leadership skills. They start looking at your letters of rec, your essays. So what happens is that your application is usually read several times, and they see, okay, how far along you're going to get in the process before they offer you admissions, or you go into the pile they're not going to offer you admissions. But then there's a pile of maybes. Now, if you get to that pile of maybes, that's when they start looking at demonstrated interest, and that's where they might start looking at your social media, because they're having a tough time trying to determine who they're going to give those last spots to. So that's where it matters.
Okay.
So the school may say, you know what, we're debating between these two students. We have one spot left. So we're going to look at, see how serious they are about coming here. So we're going to look at demonstrated interest. Have they been coming to the tours, things like that?
Okay.
Have they been reaching out? And let's go check their social media. And they check their social media, and you probably even heard these controversial situations from these Ivy Leagues where they've turned down students. They've rescinded it because of maybe hate speech, racist comments, things like that. Usually they don't look at that in the beginning of the process. They look at it later on in the process if they're debating if they're going to offer you admissions, or they find out even after they've offered admissions, and they check and they look, and they've been known to rescind. They've been known to take back an offer. So that's where it may matter for particular colleges.
Yeah, it's a brand, right? It's a brand. Yeah. And do you align with their values?
And you know what? You have to be careful too, because sometimes, especially these really highly competitive colleges, sometimes other students will tell on you.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Why give ammunition? So students must be very careful about their social media presence. Because if somebody is upset because they didn't get in, but your student got in, they can let the admissions office will look at this person who you just admitted. So, I tell students, don't give anyone ammunition to set you up or to rescind an offer. So I do have that conversation with my students as well, because that is important. So that's a great question. It is important. Again, is it a deciding factor? For most colleges, no. But for some, yes. So you don't want to take that risk.
I have a friend who has a daughter, I think 2 daughters, who go to a very expensive private school here in LA. And the kids actually video students doing things that they shouldn't be doing. And they send it, like it's that competitive and vicious. They will send that information, that video of maybe a student fighting, or maybe a student doing something inappropriate, and we'll send it to the college admissions people.
So you've heard that, right? So,
yes, from a parent. He said it is so vicious. He wasn't even ready.
Wow. Yeah.
I was shocked.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, I've heard things in law school where people, they're in the library ripping out pages and things like that. I've heard that, but that's down the line. I did not know that parents and students were this vicious, that they were doing things like this.
I mean, most people would never think to do something like that, but there's an element out there, absolutely, people who are willing to do something like that.
Mm. Do
Yes.
you have any and I'm going to wrap this up soon, but I don't want to use the word cohort, but do you ever have the kids who you've helped in the past come back and talk to some of the kids who may be going into their freshman year to help them understand, like, these are some things you can expect? Be mindful of this. This is the kind of peer
Mhm.
pressure that you might run into. Do you ever do any of that?
So I started my business in 2016. So it's been 7 years. I think that's a great idea. I have not yet. What I'm seeing now is I have actually several students now who are my clients again, who are going to like medical school, who are
Mm.
graduating. So this is new for me, actually. This next stage in my business and my client, the type of clients that I have. So yes, I have several students who graduated from college, who I worked with, 6 years ago, who are now want to go to graduate school, who want to go to medical school, and they're actually my clients again. And we're talking about, what programs. But I think what you're bringing up is a fabulous idea that I'm going to look into, because now I'm starting to have clients there who are graduates who could come back and speak to my new students. So not
Yeah.
yet, but
Yeah,
love
maybe,
it.
and maybe, maybe it's a little ticketed event or something like that, like a brunch, and
I love it.
they can network, and I don't know, I love what you're doing, and it's so needed. And kids really struggle, especially foster youth, their freshman year in college. So I think that would be, something great you could think about.
Yeah,
But anyway.
many students have,
Mhm.
actually the majority, well, not actually 100% of students, it is a transition. It's not always a bad or negative, but it is a huge transition for young people. So they need
Mhm.
as much guidance as possible. But yeah, maybe we can even do a podcast or something, in regards to a brunch, and having students come
Yeah.
and talk to students who are just starting their journey. I love
Yeah. That would be awesome.
I like
Look,
that.
look at us talking about business.
Let's make it happen, Carla.
So I want to know how people can connect with you. Like, how does this work?
Okay. So like I said, I start seeing students as early as middle school, but I also get seniors at the last minute in the fall, needing assistance. So all my meetings are via Zoom. So they would just contact me. I'll give you my information. Do you want me to give it to you now, or are you going to
I'll
post?
put it in the show notes.
Okay. All right. Yeah. They can email me. They can use my cell number. Just text me, call me. And I do have a website as well.
Okay,
Uh,
we'll put that there too.
yes. So they can reach me through any of those forums,
Hmm.
and we can just get started. The first meeting, if the families want to join for the first part of it, the first meeting is usually 2 hours, because it's just so much to cover. And then most meetings after are about an hour. And also there's no minimum kind of requirement. It just depends on, after that first meeting, what I do is write a summary, send my invoice, and then the student will talk to their parents about, they'll have the conversation of how often they want to meet. So
Hmm.
whatever is good for the family, then we work that out. And that's how it works.
Oh, I love this. Are there a lot of services like this out there?
So there are independent college admission counselors out there. Um, but I already know that I fill in a very unique niche,
Hmm.
in regards to my background of kind of taking on that holistic approach, kind of dealing with the kinds of psychosocial piece of it, which I feel like that's, my parents are very happy. They're very happy. They feel very relieved. Usually they come to me very, very stressed. But at the end of the process, my clients are not stressed. They're very,
And you know what else I like about
mhm.
you too? Well, here's a question. You
Yeah,
do out of state too, right? People don't have
yeah,
you're via Zoom, so people don't have to be in LA, right?
absolutely. I have clients across the country, Florida,
Okay.
Atlanta. Yeah. Hmm.
Here's the thing I like about you. One is you've had a success with your own children.
Hmm.
So you have your daughter who has this amazing story and she has no college debt. And then you have your son who is on his way,
Yes.
right? And so
Yes.
like you have kids at different ages. So you've and one's a guy and one's a girl. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know. It just, to me, you got like, you're the right person for this.
Because I have, I mean, not only my background, but just my personal experience. I always say that my daughter was my experiment, because when I started my business in 2016, I think she was a sophomore.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I actually, a lot of it was just, when I started my business, it was also just my own personal experience working with a young lady who, as a Black woman going into one of the most highly kind of competitive industries where there are not many Black women, women it's in itself in that industry.
Mm-hmm.
So I also have that experience with specialized programs as well.
I love it.
So, very highly competitive programs, highly specialized programs. So I've worked with several families regarding or students regarding portfolios. So I have a tons of experience with portfolios in different industries that are very, very highly selective. And I think I mentioned this to you before. Like, for example, my daughter's program, they only in the program at USC, they only accepted 18 students. 18 students in that program. I've worked with two other students helping them get into that same program, and both of them got in.
Are you
Yeah.
serious?
So I'm 3 for 3. I feel
Okay.
good about that. I'm 3 for 3 regarding helping students get into. So she has a friend now. She went to elementary school with, and I think he's in his last year in the same exact program. And I helped. The mother reached out to me. She was like, "My son wants to get into the program your daughter went into, and he's killing it at USC, really doing well."
Wow.
So yeah, so I have that personal experience as well.
Mm-hmm.
And my kids are different. My son is completely different, going into a totally different industry and field, a different type of learner. And I'm very much about working wherever the student is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my approach is not cookie cutter.
Mm-hmm.
So and I've worked with students who are 4.0s, and I've worked with students who barely graduated from high school.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm very confident I'm going to be successful with either.
Oh, you
So,
sure are.
so, yeah, so yeah, I have that personal experience. I'm just very passionate about what I do. I love it.
Oh my goodness, I love it too. I'm so proud of you, sis. I mean, I knew
You.
this stuff, but when we talk like this, I'm like, this lady is really doing the darn thing.
I appreciate it. Thank
That's
you.
awesome. Well, thank you for saying yes to come on to GYSB
Of
Talks.
course. Of course.
And we'll
So,
do this again. We'll do a video format in the
okay.
future.
Yes. I'm
Yeah.
completely open to that.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you, Yolanda. And thank you, everyone, for listening in to GYSB Talks. If you want to follow Yolanda, how can they follow you?
Focus1college.com. They can email me at focus1college@gmail.com. I'm on Instagram at focus1college. And I'm also on Facebook. And you can probably find me on through Focus One College as well.
Okay. And if you want to connect with me, I am GYSB Movement on all social media platforms. That's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. And you can connect with me via email if you like. I am gysbmovement@gmail.com. And until next time, I will see you all later. Take care. Thanks, Yolanda.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye. All content on this podcast and any linked blog, podcast, webinar, course, or video material is created and produced for informational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health advice. The information is general and may not be suitable for your personal circumstances or complete health objectives. Do not use this content as a standalone resource to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for the advice of a health professional. Never delay seeking advice or disregard the advice of a medical professional based on our content here on this podcast. If you have questions or concerns about your health or medical condition, please seek guidance from a medical professional.